going to say something about college football real fast that I think a lot of people need to hear. There's no dominant team this season as of right now. This is separation week. There are compelling matchups all across the board. And absolutely, you could say, without question, there are going to be teams that prove they belong in the postseason conversation. They can be a legitimate national championship contender. They can hold their own and win the conference. They can be one of the Final Four that people gravitate towards on the route to Houston. But so far, do you feel confident in any of the teams that have made headlines this year? And this is a good thing maybe for college football because it's showing you the openness of how you can win on Saturdays. But who really has stood out to you this week? Who really has shown they can be the most recognizable team in the country? Let's start off with number one, Georgia. Georgia has not had a compelling win this year. Yes, they found a way to get back against South Carolina in the second half, but let's also put in consideration, you struggled on third down in the first half. You never found a rhythm on the through the passing game, and you still really haven't found it with Carson Beck at quarterback, despite going out and adding in players via the transfer portal like Dominic Lovett from Missouri, Ra Thomas from Mississippi State. You still have questions in the passing game. And even though the rushing attack has been fine, part of the reason why you won that game was not because of you were great. It was because South Carolina couldn't make a tackle to save their life. Too many arm-breaking plays and bonehead moves by what you had with Shane Beamer's roster. And there's a reason they're sitting at 1-2. I wouldn't feel confident to say this team is number one. I would feel confident to say I believe that they have the best chance to finish this season out as an undefeated roster. But that's just because of what I know about this team. Number two, Michigan. How the hell do you throw 3 interceptions against Bowling Green if you're JJ McCarthy? The positive here is that at least you have a good potent run game. Blake Corum, another 100 rushing yard performance. Currently has 6 rushing touchdowns in college football. He's averaging 6.9 yards per play. And your defense ranks top 10. But if this is the quarterback that you're going to get in Big Ten play, there's better competition ahead. I'm not saying it's Rutgers. Rutgers may be 3-0, but they're barely squeaking by on the skin of their teeth. But you could lose to Minnesota. You could easily lose to a Penn State. And if Ohio State sets the tone this weekend against Notre Dame, you without question can lose that game. You got to see better competition, and you have to see better consistency from the offensive perspective. It's one thing to have a bad performance against a good team. It's another thing to look lackluster and inept trying to throw the football down the field against a bad opponent. How about Texas? Texas is BACKNOPE. You play well against Alabama because that should be the standard. Then it takes you 3 quarters to find rhythm against Wyoming. And I get it. Wyoming had a big upset win in Laramie against Texas Tech, a Texas Tech team that a lot of people, yours truly, believed was going to be in the college football conversation as a dark horse sleeper. And I believe that they were going to be in Arlington facing off against the Longhorns once again for a shot at winning the Big 12 title. But that does not mean that you as Texas can go play down to someone's competition. And that's been my concern with the Longhorns all season. You'll show up for big games. You'll absolutely deliver in the moments that are at its brightest. But then you struggle against lesser tier opponents. You go to Waco this weekend, face off against Baylor. Baylor's been struggling all season. There's real conversations that Dave Aranda might be on the hot seat. And he's 2 years removed from not just winning the conference title, but also winning against Lane Kiffin in the Sugar Bowl. That's a concern if you have another struggle performance. So I can't buy into Texas to be legit. The same thing goes with Florida State. You handled yourself against LSU. LSU's a good team. LSU's going to be top 10 in my opinion. They clearly look to be the most consistent roster right now in the SEC West. And then you fall apart by looking ahead at Clemson and not taking Boston College seriously. You can't really blame Jordan Travis because Travis is one part of the formula, but you have great receivers. You have a solid offensive line. You have a potent run game. Look at how you played. Look at the numbers. Look at what you did. It wasn't positive. In fact, you can make an argument that thankfully you just found a way to get an early lead because you would have lost in on the road to an organization that's about ready to fire its coach. I mean, Jordan Travis is one thing, but then look at the rushing attack. 3.8 yards per play. That's not going to get you by against Clemson. That's not going to get you by against teams like, say, a Duke. That's not going to get you by against a Miami. Number 5, USC. I like USC. I think USC is a good team. I think that there's a reason why we put them in the conversation about winning the Pac-12 title. But their defense has got to be able to start showing up a bit more. They've been okay, but they haven't been elite by any standards. And at that point, once you face off against really stellar, consistent offenses, it becomes a concern. You allow over 400 yards of offense to San Jose State. You allow Stanford to have over 350 yards of offense. You can put up points. Can you not have points scored against you? Washington right now feels like the only complete roster in college football. And the reason why I have such optimism when talking about the Huskies is because of who they have at quarterback and the receiving core. But they can't run the football extremely well. And you're going to find that out starting this weekend against Cal. They can't play exceptional defense in the secondary. Partially that's due to the fact of who they have out there. They haven't done a good job of building off of last season, and they have a ton of injuries. But Washington still is a team that people are waiting to see get that signature win. Don't have it against Boise State. Don't have it against, right now, you could say, Michigan State. And I don't think Cal's going to be the mark to where you say, okay, now they're looking like a real legitimate team. Ohio State, questions at quarterback, questions with the offense. You couldn't even beat the spread against FCS Youngstown State. Yeah, you have a defense that can get a lot of stops, but if your offense can't score, you're basically winning one possession matchups. That's not going to suffice. The same thing goes for other organizations like Notre Dame, and the same thing goes for organizations like LSU. LSU played up to its standard against Mississippi State. Mississippi State right now may be lucky to go 6-6. How are you going to look against an Alabama? Especially with the defense that does have playmakers, especially with the team that does have at least exceptional talent that matches up well against you. Like Cooley McKinstry versus Malik Neighbors is going to be a must-see television showdown. And if you take him away, what do you have in the passing attack? There's not a legitimate threat this year in college football. But this is the week to where you can absolutely say you separate the men from the boys. Florida State takes on Clemson. Clemson's rebounded since the loss to Duke. Their defense is playing up to a certain standard, and Cade Klubnik is at least starting to find a bit of a rhythm. You have Oklahoma facing off against Cincinnati. Do you play down to the competition, or do you play up to the competition? Oregon, is their offense going to be potent against Deion Sanders on prime time television on ABC? What about a team like maybe Alabama or an Ole Miss? How do you handle facing adversity with quarterback concerns or with lackluster production coming from the defense and Ole Miss's side? What do you expect from that? Other teams out there absolutely have games to watch for. LSU, I'd consider them an upset watch against Arkansas, especially if you do get back Raheem Sanders. Same thing goes for Texas against Baylor. It's a road game. How do you look at McLean Stadium? Penn State, does Drew Aller rebound at home after struggling at times against Illinois secondary? How do you play in that performance? And then, of course, you have other games like USC versus Arizona State. Don't really worry about that one, especially with Jaden Rashada out. And Washington versus Cal, kind of the same conversation. This is a week in college football where I don't think we'll get the answer of who are the superstars and the teams that are the ones to watch for making it to the CFP. But I do think this is a week to where you can start really figuring out where teams stand in their divisions or in their conferences. Struggle wins will only get you so far. Absolute Monday performances will only get you so far. And the bottom line is that if you don't deliver starting in week 4, now there's a legitimate conversation about your status moving forward. Thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.